Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take a whole stack of sources, pull out the best bits, the vital, surprising, sometimes funny stuff, so you get instantly up to speed. And today, we're tackling something I think everyone feels sometimes. That constant reactive mode.
Oh, yeah. Putting out fires, dealing with one emergency after another, just stuck in that cycle.
Feeling like you're always, well, downstream.
Exactly. Just handling the problems as they float by, never really getting ahead. It feels like we're often set up to deliver, pounds of cure.
Reacting to stuff, illness, complaints, crime.
Right. Instead of really investing in those ounces of prevention, trying to stop things before they even become problems.
That's a really neat way to put it.
Yeah.
And yet today's deep dive is all about escaping that cycle. We're digging into upstream thinking.
Solving problems before they happen.
Yeah. And our main source here is Dan Heath's book, Upstream, the Quest to Solve Problems Before They Happen. Really fascinating stuff. He talked to hundreds of what he calls unconventional problem solvers.
So our goal today really is to unpack the psychological forces that keep us stuck downstream, and then look at how people and whole organizations actually have managed to move upstream. We want to give you some, real insights, some surprising stories, maybe help you get more proactive yourself.
Okay, so upstream thinking. We sort of touched on it, but let's nail down the difference it makes, because it can be huge. Think about Expedia.
Right, the travel company.
I used to get something like 20 million support calls a year.
20 million, just for people who couldn't find their itinerary.
Exactly. And the downstream way to handle that.
Yeah.
Just answer the calls. Hire more people.
Yeah. But this team, Ryan O'Neill and Tucker Moody, they looked upstream. They asked why people were calling. Well, turned out people mistyped emails or deleted the itinerary, stuff like that. And crucially, there was no way to just get it back online themselves.
So the problem wasn't really the calls.
No, it was the lack of a self-service option.
So the upstream fix was?
They built a simple online tool, let customers retrieve their own itineraries.
Oh, and the result?
Those 20 million calls, pretty much all of them just vanished.
Wow, just gone.
Yeah.
That's a powerful example.
It really shows the potential. But here's the paradox, right? We all nod along, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. Everyone agrees.
Sure.
Yet, society often is really optimized to deliver those pounds of cure. Like the U.S. health system spends way more downstream treating sickness.
Compared to other countries.
Yeah. Most developed nations spend like $2 or $3 upstream on housing, social services, things that prevent illness for every $1 they spend downstream just, healing sick people. The U.S. is way off that mark.
So, okay, if prevention is so appealing, makes so much sense, and clearly works, what holds us back? Why aren't we all doing it all the time?
Well, that's the core question Heath tackles. He identifies these three big psychological barriers that keep pushing us downstream.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first one is problem blindness.
Problem blindness.
Yeah. It's the belief that, bad stuff is just normal, it's inevitable, or it's just out of our control. That's just how it is feeling.
Right. Like, he talks about the New England Patriots back in, 1999? Before Dr. Marcus Elliott showed up, hamstring injuries, they were just seen as, part of the game. You play hard, you get hurt. That's football.
Nothing you can do about it. Classic problem blindness.
And Elliott didn't buy it.
No, he used data, assess muscle imbalances, put players into risk groups high, medium, low.
And the high-risk guys?
Got aggressive off-season training focused on those imbalances, and the result was stunning.
Yeah.
Injuries dropped from 22 the year before to just 3 in one season.
Whoa.
And that success really shifted things in pro sports, made injury prevention this data-driven thing, moving away from it just happens.
It's amazing how easily we can normalize something that's actually fixable.
Totally. So escaping problem blindness isn't just about, looking harder. It's about challenging those basic assumptions. What are we accepting as just the way it is?
We saw it with the Patriots, but it gets even trickier when it affects whole communities, like the Chicago public schools dropout rate.
Oh, yeah. For years, the high dropout rate was kind of accepted. It was the student's fault, or the root causes were just too big, too messy to fix.
Problem blindness again.
Exactly. But then researchers found this incredible leverage point.
Which was?
9th grade. Turns out even students who struggled in 8th grade, if they stayed on track as freshmen, good attendance, passing grades, they had a 68% chance of graduating.
68%. Wow. That 1 year made that much difference.
Huge difference. And that insight drove massive changes.
Like what?
Well, for one, they started assigning the best, most experienced teachers to freshmen, completely flipped the old seniority system.
That's a big shift.
And they rethought discipline, those zero-tolerance policies.
Yeah.
Sometimes suspending a kid for a minor fight was the very thing that knocked them off track permanently.
So they adjusted that.
Yeah. But maybe the biggest change was creating these freshman success teams. Teachers from different subjects, counselors, all meeting regularly,
Right.
looking at real-time data for individual kids, asking literally, okay, what are we going to do about Michael next week?
Proactive. Specific.
Exactly. Spotting problems early, intervening right away before things spiraled. It broke through that blindness.
It really makes you think,
Mhm.
what else are we just not seeing? There's that crazy study, right? The one with the radiologist.
Oh, the gorilla. Yeah.
They're looking super closely at CT scans for cancer nodules,
Right. Their focus is intense.
and a significant number of them completely miss a tiny picture of a gorilla someone stuck in the scan.
It's wild. Inattentional blindness. We literally don't see what we're not looking for, even when it's staring us in the face.
The problem blindness runs deep.
It really does. And it's not just visual things like gorillas. It's when problems become so normalized we don't even register them as problems anymore. Think about sexual harassment. Back in the 60s, 70s, it was just part of the offense landscape for many women, often brushed off or even encouraged to tolerate.
The term didn't even exist for a while, right?
Exactly. Journalist Lynn Farley coined sexual harassment in 1975. Just naming it was a huge step. It helps society wake up from that blindness and say, no, this isn't okay. This needs fixing.
Naming it gives it power.
It does. And sometimes it takes an individual noticing something feels wrong, like Dr. Simone Denise in Brazil.
What does she notice?
C-section rates, they were incredibly high, like 50%. And she realized doctors often weren't even discussing the risks and benefits with patients. It was just the default.
Wow.
So she started a campaign questioning that norm, and it worked. C-sections went down, vaginal births went up, avoided something like 10,000 unnecessary surgeries.
So that escape, it starts with that shock, that feeling of, wait, this isn't normal.
Yeah, that jolt of awareness, realizing you've accepted the abnormal as normal, it can happen to anyone, even CEOs.
The Ray Anderson, the carpet guy.
Exactly. CEO of Interface, he hadn't really thought much about his company's environmental footprint until he heard an environmentalist speak, and it hit him like, quote, a spear in his chest.
A spear in the chest. That's vivid.
Right. That shock led to Mission Zero, this radical goal to eliminate all negative environmental impact from his company by 2020. He saw the problem, felt it, and took ownership.
Okay, so that taking ownership, that sounds like the next barrier.
It is barrier number 2, lack of ownership.
So this is, when you do see the problem, the gorilla is visible, the C-section read is alarming,
But you think, yeah, that's bad, but it's not my job to fix it. Someone else should handle it.
the bystander effect, almost.
Sort of. Heath uses this great personal story from Jeannie Forrest. She's at a conference, annoyed because the speaker's head is blocking the screen.
Happens all the time.
Right, and her first instinct is frustration, feeling powerless, like, why doesn't he move?
Yeah.
But then she has this realization, like, she can fix the problem. She can just move her chair.
Ah, the move your chair moment.
Exactly. It became her mental shortcut for, okay, how can I act here? What part of this do I own? It's about finding your agency.
That's a great little mantra. Though you got to be careful not to blame the victim.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Sometimes you genuinely can't move your chair.
Absolutely. Crucial caveat. It's about finding your levers where they exist, not pretending everyone has the same power to act.
Got it. So a bigger example of taking ownership.
Dr. Bob Sanders and car seats. Back then, pediatricians treated sick kids. They didn't really lobby for public safety laws, wasn't seen as their lane. But Sanders read this article, The Battered Child Syndrome, and it spurred him to act. He decided preventing car crash injuries was his problem.
So he stepped outside the traditional role.
Totally. He lobbied like crazy, fought resistance, and Tennessee in 1978 became the first state to require car seats for young kids. He chose that burden because he saw the need.
Yeah.
He took ownership.
Okay, so barrier 1, problem blindness. Barrier 2, lack of ownership. What's the third hurdle?
The third one is tunneling.
Tunneling, like digging a tunnel.
Yeah. Kind of. It's what happens when you're overwhelmed. Usually by scarcity, not enough time, money, resources. You develop tunnel vision.
You can only focus on what's right in front of you. The immediate crisis.
Exactly. You just focus on putting out the nearest fire, long-term planning, prevention that goes out the window. You're just trying to survive the day.
He uses the example of an ICU nurse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe she notices, say, that the security tags on newborns keep falling off. It's a system problem. It happens again and again.
Okay.
But is she going to stop her immediate patient care, track down the root cause, write a proposal, go to meetings? No way. She's swamped.
But she just deals with the tag that fell off right now.
Right. It's much easier, more natural even, to just stay in the tunnel and handle the immediate issue rather than stepping back to fix the system.
Yeah.
The urgent crowds out the important.
That makes so much sense. We all feel that sometimes.
Definitely. But what's interesting is sometimes humanity does tackle these huge, distant, non-urgent problems, like the ozone layer.
Oh, yeah. CFCs destroying the ozone. That wasn't exactly an immediate crisis back in the 70s when scientists first flagged it.
No, it was distant, invisible, decades away from the worst effects. A classic upstream problem you'd think tunneling would prevent us from addressing.
But we did address it.
Huh?
The Montreal Protocol in '87. Countries actually banned CFCs.
Yeah. And while the ozone layer won't be fully healed until maybe 2050, we stopped making it worse. We acted collectively on a future threat.
So how did we overcome the tunneling on that one?
That's the paradox. Somehow, we managed to make that upstream threat feel downstream. We created urgency around a problem decades away.
Like Kelly.
Well, it took scientific consensus, public awareness campaigns, political will. It wasn't easy. But sometimes we can create that focus, maybe by co-opting the mechanisms of tunneling itself. Think about tax deadlines.
Okay. Creates artificial urgency.
Exactly. Forces you out of the day-to-day tunnel to deal with that specific looming thing.
Okay, so these barriers are real. Problem blindness, lack of ownership, tunneling. How do we actually overcome them? How do leaders make upstream work happen?
Well, Heath doesn't just diagnose the problem. He offers a framework, these 7 key questions that successful upstream leaders tend to ask.
7 questions. Okay, what's the first one?
Question 1. How will you unite the right people?
Sounds straightforward, but probably isn't. Who are the right people?
It's not just about titles or power. It's about having the right mix of perspectives, skills, and crucially, the ability and willingness to act together. Iceland's story with teen substance abuse is amazing here.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. They had a huge problem.
Massive. 1997, 42% of 15, 16-year-olds said they have been drunk in the past month.
Wow.
Instead of just saying kids need to behave better, they brought everyone together. Parents, schools, police, city officials, sports clubs.
The whole ecosystem around the kids.
Exactly, to change the environment, not just individual behavior.
And what do they actually do?
Lots of things. Like parents organized walks at night, just being visible, nudging kids home.
Okay.
And this was brilliant, based on research by Harvey Milkman about natural highs. They gave gift cards worth hundreds of dollars to every family.
Gift cards for what?
For joining sports clubs, music lessons, art classes, structured recreational activities, healthy alternatives.
So flooding the environment with positive options.
Pretty much. And the results were incredible.
Right.
By 2018, that 42% drunk figure, down to like 3 students out of 40.
That's transformative.
Totally reshaped the culture.
Right.
And it wasn't a top-down mandate. It was collective voluntary effort, getting the right people involved and aligned.
Another example?
Kelly Dunn in Newburyport, Massachusetts. Domestic violence. She was a volunteer, saw the same women coming back again and again for restraining orders. Stuck downstream.
Right.
She teamed up with a researcher, Jacqueline Campbell, and helped build a high-risk team.
Who was on it?
About 13, 15 people. Police, prosecutors, victim advocates, social workers, substance abuse counselors, all the key players.
Diverse expertise.
They met monthly, shared real-time data, created specific safety plans for high-risk women. Police would even do drive-bys past abusers' homes just to send a signal, we're watching.
Proactive deterrence.
Yeah. And in the first 12 years, 172 high-risk cases, 0 subsequent reassaults.
0. That's amazing. Shows the power of that coordinated approach.
It really does. And that focus on shared real-time data, we see it again in Rockford, Illinois, tackling homelessness.
Okay.
Mayor Larry Morrissey realized their efforts weren't working because they were fragmented, using old static data, so they joined the Built for Zero movement.
What did that involve?
Uniting all the different agencies and nonprofits, and crucially, using dynamic real-time data, a by-name list of everyone experiencing homelessness. Data used for learning and action, not just reporting.
So they knew exactly who needed help, right?
Exactly. And they could coordinate housing efforts effectively. Result: Rockford became the first U.S. city to functionally end veteran homelessness in 2015, housed 156 veterans that year.
Incredible. So uniting the right people means diverse perspectives, shared goals, and really good real-time information.
That seems to be the pattern, which leads nicely into the second question.
Let me guess. Once you have the people, you need to change the system.
Bingo! Question 2, how will you change the system? It's not enough just to have meetings. You need to alter the underlying structures.
Dr. Anthony Aiton's work really hits this home, right? The life expectancy gaps.
Yeah, his analysis of death certificates in cities like Baltimore, Cleveland, finding these shocking differences, like a 23-year gap over just a 4-mile walk in Cleveland.
Like Sweden and Afghanistan in the same city, he said.
Exactly. And his point was, it's not just about who has health insurance, it's the system itself, the chronic stress, the lack of control in certain neighborhoods that's making people sick.
The system is like a machine that determines probabilities.
That's his phrase. And upstream work ultimately has to be about changing that machine, changing those probabilities, not just dealing with the output.
Changing the water, not just pulling people out.
Yeah, right. Or like Matty Schwab, the baseball groundskeeper.
The squishy swamp.
Yeah. He secretly messed with the dirt around first base sand, Pete Moss to slow down Maury Wills, the Dodgers' star base stealer. He changed the system, the playing field itself, to prevent the problem.
That's a clever, if slightly sneaky, example.
Or Van Moof bikes, reducing shipping damage 70–80% just by
Printing a picture of a TV on the box.
Right. Subtly changed how handlers treated it. Didn't need a memo, just changed a cue in the system.
So changing the system can be about policy, like Aiton argues for, or design, like Van Moof, or even landscaping, like Schwab.
Yeah, it's about finding those levers that shift the underlying dynamics. Sometimes it's empowering people within the system, too, like in Fresno, the Building Healthy Communities initiative.
What did they do?
They helped residents in underserved neighborhoods challenge a highway project that was sending millions to wealthier areas.
And they won.
They got the money reallocated for things their community needed, a college campus, a park. More power led to policy wins, which changed the system.
Okay, so you've united people, you're looking at system change. Where do you actually push? That leads to question 3.
Exactly. Question 3. Where can you find a point of leverage? Where can a small push create a big impact?
Like in Chicago, with the violence reduction work?
Yeah, the crime lab there dug into homicide reports. They found many weren't like strategic gang hits. They were impulsive, fights escalating tragically fast.
So impulsivity was the leverage point.
That was the insight. So they backed the Becoming a Man, or BAM, program.
What did BAM do?
Used cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, basically helping young men recognize triggers, slow down their thinking in heated moments, use check-ins, role-playing, even sports activities.
And did it work?
The results from randomized trials were really strong. A 28–30% drop in violent crime arrests for the guys in the program. Huge impact from targeting that specific leverage point, impulsivity.
Wow, finding the right place to push.
Or hospitals realizing sepsis was causing a third of their patient deaths, something barely on their radar before they looked closely.
Getting close to the problem revealed the leverage points.
And they reduced sepsis deaths by 60%. By targeting specific process changes.
It's often not the most obvious thing, like the airport concourse designers.
Corgan, yeah. They just watched people struggle and found simple leverage points. More benches near gates, grab bars, better ramp queues, even just 3 flat steps before an escalator.
Tiny changes. Big difference for weary travelers.
Exactly. And increasingly, healthcare is finding leverage by looking outside the clinic. Screening for hunger, housing instability.
The social determinants.
Right. Recognizing that those non-medical factors are often where the real leverage lies for improving health outcomes. You got to look beyond the symptoms to the underlying drivers.
Okay, leverage found. What's next? Need to know if a problem is coming.
Precisely. Question 4. How will you get early warning of the problem? Can you see it coming before it hits?
Like smart elevators sending data to the cloud.
Perfect example. Monitoring speed, noise, temperature. Spotting trends that predict a breakdown before it strands people. Predictive maintenance.
But warnings aren't always helpful, right? The alarm fatigue problem.
Big issue. Especially in hospitals. One study found 85% of ICU alarms were false positives or clinically irrelevant.
So nurses just start tuning them out.
Yeah, they get desensitized. Which means when a real critical alarm goes off, it might get missed. The warning system fails because it cries wolf too often.
So you need a signal you can trust.
Exactly. Which is what makes the Sandy Hook Promise Say Something system interesting.
The anonymous tip line for students.
Yeah. Phone app report concerns about potential violence or self-harm. And it has averted credible school shooting threats. It provides actionable early warnings.
Even though after the fact, someone might try to dismiss a prevented incident as a false positive.
Right. That's the challenge with prevention, proving the averted danger was real. But this system shows the value of having a trusted channel for those early signals, filtering the noise.
Okay, so you have early warnings. Now you need to know if your upstream efforts are actually working. Question 5.
Question 5. How will you know you're succeeding? And this is tricky upstream because success often looks like nothing. Nothing bad happened.
Right. And that can lead to what Heath calls ghost victories.
Yeah, where it looks like you're succeeding based on some metric, but you haven't actually achieved the real mission. Often happens when you substitute an easy measurement for a hard one.
Like the New York City crime drop example. Huge drop in murders, often credited to CompStat.
Right, the data-driven accountability system for police precincts. Reduce crime or explain why not.
What?
But evidence suggests it also led to gaming the metrics, reclassifying serious assaults as minor offenses to make the numbers look better.
Ah, so the numbers improved, but maybe the actual underlying safety didn't improve as much. A ghost victory.
Potentially, yeah. Contrast that with Chicago Public Schools again.
How are they different?
They used paired measures, an idea from Intel's Andy Grove. They didn't just track graduation rates, the long-term goal. They tracked things like freshman on-track status, even weekly attendance and grades.
And ACT scores, too,
That's
right?
Mm-hmm. And ACT scores went up alongside graduation rates. Their short-term metrics, attendance, grades, FOT status, were genuinely leading to the long-term goal, graduation, college readiness, not a ghost victory.
It's about making sure your short-term dials actually connect to your ultimate destination.
Perfectly put. Or Katie Cho in Boston with sidewalks.
Oh yeah, the repair budget was going to the wealthy areas because they complained more.
The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Easy fixes, happy constituents in vocal neighborhoods. Looked like success, but wasn't serving the areas with the worst sidewalks, often in low-income areas.
Well, she changed it.
She shifted to proactive, strategic overhauls based on actual need, not just complaints. Harder, less immediately rewarding politically maybe, but aligned with the true mission of equitable service.
So short-term measures are vital for navigation,
That's bits.
but they absolutely have to link to the real goal. He mentions an email marketing firm.
Ah, yeah. They measured success by email open rates. Seemed logical. But their sales started tanking. Why? Because the emails with the highest open rates had catchy but totally misleading subject lines. People opened them, got annoyed, and didn't buy. They were succeeding by the wrong metric.
Yikes. Okay, so measure carefully. Next question must be about not messing things up.
You got it. Question 6. How will you avoid doing harm? Because upstream interventions changing systems. They can have unintended consequences.
Like on Macquarie Island, trying to get rid of invasive species.
Right. Rabbits, rats, mice were destroying the ecosystem. First attempt. Poison bait.
What happened?
Killed hundreds of native birds along with the pests. Terrible side effects.
So they stopped.
They recalibrated. Developed a much more complex, multi-pronged plan, targeted shooting, detector dogs, releasing a specific rabbit virus. It eventually worked, but they had to learn and adapt to avoid doing more harm.
It requires experimentation, humility.
Absolutely. Which is the opposite of the infamous cobra effect.
Ah, the classic story. British and India offer money for dead cobras.
Trying to reduce the snake population. Good intention.
So people start breeding cobras to collect the bounty.
Right. Then the British cancel the bounty,
And the breeders just release all their now worthless cobras.
resulting in more cobras than when they started. Perfect example of an intervention backfiring spectacularly.
We see it in less dramatic ways too, right? Like the open plan office,
Oh, yeah. Designed for collaboration. Right. More interaction.
but often does the opposite.
Studies show it often reduces face-to-face interaction, increases interruptions, forces people to hide away to get deep work done. Unintended consequences.
So how do you avoid this? How do you avoid breeding cobras?
Well, the short answer is, when you don't know for sure, you have to experiment carefully. Test things out. Get feedback.
Like Danelle Meadows said, get your model out there where it can be shot at.
Exactly. Invite challenges. Be humble. Upstream work isn't about move fast and break things. It's about thoughtful design and constant learning.
Feedback loops are key.
Crucial. like physical therapists getting photos from patients showing their exercise progress, or even a remote company setting up a specific feedback channel just for how meetings are run. Constant adjustment based on real results.
Okay, makes sense. Humility, feedback. Now, the big practical one, question 7.
The million-dollar question, maybe literally. Question 7, who will pay for what does not happen?
Ah, yeah, the prevention paradox payoff problem. If you succeed, nothing bad happens. How do you get funding for? Nothing.
It's the core of the wrong pocket problem. The person or group who invests in prevention often isn't the same one who reaps all the financial savings down the line.
Like U.S. healthcare being mostly fee-for-service.
Exactly. Doctors and hospitals get paid for doing stuff, tests, surgeries, appointments, not necessarily for keeping people healthy and out of the hospital. The incentives are downstream.
The Nurse-Family Partnership Program is a killer example here.
It really is. Works with low-income, first-time moms, provides home visits from nurses during pregnancy and early childhood.
And the results are amazing, right?
Yeah, consistently strong, less smoking during pregnancy, fewer preterm births, less child abuse and neglect, even fewer arrests for the mothers later on. Huge positive impact.
And financially.
Studies estimate a return of like $6.50 for every $1 invested.
So, why isn't it everywhere if it saves so much money?
The wrong pocket problem. The entity paying for the program, maybe a state health department or a foundation, doesn't capture all those savings.
The savings show up elsewhere.
Yeah, like lower Medicaid costs down the road, reduced welfare payments, fewer costs in the criminal justice system. The benefits are spread out, but the initial cost is concentrated.
So the payer doesn't see the full ROI directly.
Right, which is why models like pay for success or social impact bonds are emerging. Investors front the money.
And they only get paid back by the government or payer if the program actually achieves specific agreed-upon outcomes.
Exactly. It tries to bridge that gap, align the incentives.
Like Medicare Accountable Care Organizations, ACOs.
Dr. Lilly's practice in the book is an example. They get a share of the savings if they keep their Medicare patients healthier and out of the hospital compared to projections.
So now the doctor is paid for prevention, for keeping people well.
It shifts the incentive upstream.
But even then, it can be tricky. The Diabetes Prevention Program.
Oh, the DPP paradox is wild. Proven program helps people at high risk avoid developing type 2 diabetes, saves lives, improves quality of life.
Sounds like a slam dunk for coverage.
You'd think.
Yeah.
But initially, the official government actuaries, the folks who score the costs, determined it was not cost-saving for Medicare.
How could preventing diabetes not save money?
Because, wait for it, people who didn't get diabetes would live longer.
Okay.
And therefore incur more healthcare costs over their now longer lifetime.
You're kidding. That's perverse.
It's a sick joke of the system, as Heath calls it. Thankfully, legal language was eventually changed to allow it to be covered based on improving health, not just short-term cost savings. But it shows how deep the downstream bias runs in funding.
Wow. Okay, so funding prevention is a huge systemic challenge.
Massive. Now, shifting gears slightly, there's a special kind of upstream challenge, dealing with threats that are really distant or maybe even improbable, the stuff people dismiss as
Chicken Little, the sky is falling.
Exactly. Heath calls it the Chicken Little problem. How do you mobilize action for something that might not happen or is far off, especially when success means nothing happens? It's the profits dilemma again.
Like Y2K.
Perfect example. Remember the late 90s? Panic. Computers would fail, planes would fall, civilization would crumble on January 1st, 2000.
Oh, I remember. Huge deal. John Koskin and the Y2K czar, right, getting government and industry ready.
Unprecedented coordination. The Fed printed $50 billion extra cash just in case.
And then, January 1st, 2000 came.
Mostly nothing. A few minor glitches.
So the skeptics said, see? It was all hype, never a real threat.
The profits dilemma in action. But the IT folks who did the work said, no, the reason nothing happened is because we worked like crazy for years fixing the code. The prevention was invisible.
You can't easily prove the disaster you averted.
Exactly. Contrast that with the Hurricane Pam simulation.
In New Orleans, 2004. Simulating a monster Category 5 hitting the city.
Yeah, and they had a no fairy dust rule. You had to plan with realistic resources, face the hard truth.
And then, just 13 months later,
Hurricane Katrina hit. Eerily similar scenario. And the data from the PAM simulation projected death tolls, levee failures was disturbingly accurate.
So the simulation wasn't just an academic exercise.
No, it built muscle memory. It forced agencies to talk to each other, figure out who does what before the crisis. They exchanged business cards during Pam so they knew who to call during Katrina.
And didn't Louisiana actually change its evacuation plan based on an earlier, smaller hurricane drill?
Yeah, a previous hurricane evacuation had been a disaster. People stuck for hours. They used that failure, learned from it, redesigned the contraflow plan. So when Katrina threatened, the evacuation, while still difficult, was much, much smoother for many. Practicing prevention paid off.
Simulations make the distant threat feel real, feel downstream.
They do. And then there's the ultimate long-range prevention, planetary protection.
Moon germs.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Back in the 50s, scientists like Joshua Lederberg started warning about space exploration. 2 risks. Forward contamination, taking Earth microbes to other planets.
And backward contamination, bringing something dangerous back from, say, Mars or the moon.
Right. Lederberg really pushed this, basically willed an entire scientific discipline into existence, Heath says.
Leading to the NASA Planetary Protection Officer.
Yep. A whole office dedicated to preventing a problem, alien plagues, basically, that has, so far, never happened. The ultimate invisible upstream success.
Yeah, these are big, fascinating examples, but how does this translate to us, to the listener? This section, you upstream.
Yeah, because this isn't just for CEOs or governments. How can you apply this thinking in your own life, your work, your community?
First step seems to be tackling your own personal problem blindness.
Totally. What problems, what frustrations have you just come to accept? In your routine, your relationships, your health. Where have you told yourself that's just how it is?
Or that's someone else's job to fix. Where are you missing ownership?
Mm-hmm. And once you spot one of those recurring frustrations, ask yourself Jeannie Forrest's question. Can I move my chair here?
Where do I have some leverage, some agency I wasn't seeing before?
Exactly. Find that small, consistent upstream intervention. Look at Trisha Darnell. Her husband was deployed overseas. Her young daughters were heartbroken.
A common painful problem for military families.
Yeah. Downstream is just coping. But Trisha went upstream. She created these daddy dolls with her husband's picture, even a recording of his heartbeat.
Wow. To ease the separation.
Right. And nurses at the base saw how much they helped. They asked for more. Trisha and a neighbor ended up founding Hug a Hero dolls. Now they're on official deployment checklists.
So solving her own personal upstream problem scaled up to help thousands.
Macro starts with micro. Or think about the invention of the tennis ball hopper.
Huh. Yeah. Someone got tired of bending over constantly, tired of the back pain.
Solved their own downstream frustration with an upstream invention that prevents the problem. Simple, but it works.
Or the couple who saw their friends getting divorced.
Yeah, they asked themselves, are we headed that way? And decided to be proactive.
Their upstream intervention. A hot tub.
Sounds funny, but it wasn't just about relaxing. They designated the hot tub as a safe discussion zone, a place they could bring up any issue, big or small, and talk it through calmly without it escalating.
They built a system to maintain their relationship health.
Exactly, an upstream system. So the key takeaway for applying this personally is that idea. Be impatient for action, but patient for outcomes.
Don't wait to start, but don't expect overnight miracles.
Right. Small, consistent upstream actions chip away at problems. Build better systems in your own life.
The goal isn't necessarily heroism. It's about shifting the odds.
Yeah, making it so the right things happen by default, as Heath puts it. Designing things so the problems are less likely to occur in the first place.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. Quick recap.
We dove into upstream thinking, solving problems before they start. We hit the 3 big barriers: problem blindness, lack of ownership, and tunneling.
Then we walked through those 7 key questions for upstream leaders. Unite the right people, change the system, find leverage, get early warning, know you're succeeding, avoid doing harm.
And the big one, who pays for what does not happen? Plus the challenge of those distant chicken little threats.
And crucially, this isn't just theory for big shots. It's practical for everyone looking to move beyond just reacting and start preventing problems in their own world.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with. As you go through your week, consider one area where you feel stuck downstream, just reacting. Where are you optimizing for pounds of cure?
And what would it look like, just hypothetically, to invest in an ounce of prevention there, even a tiny system change?
Where could you move your chair in a situation you maybe accepted for too long? What's one small point of leverage you might have overlooked?
And maybe think bigger, too. What systemic problems are you constantly bumping up against that just maybe could be redesigned so these simply don't happen as often? Food for thought.